Well, Lars, great to see you again. So there we just heard obviously the broader context from Daniel, and I think we're in a climate, clearly, as everybody is more than aware of, inflation, economic uncertainty, energy prices which are rising and rising, especially here in Europe. How would you broadly characterize the landscape for let's say the gigafactory side of this supply chain? Clearly, as someone who's building up too, is it becoming tougher to gain partners, financing, to move these forward, or in fact is the rationale becoming even stronger?
Well, for sure, from announcement to reality is a long way, and I would say that we are in a new green industrialization, and I think this space in this downturn will be probably one of the few investment areas which will still be valid after I foresee serious difficulties in the autumn and the winter. And from that perspective, I think we are in a space where it still will be a lot of attention and interest, because we are in this space. You have both governments and private equity are fueling funds into it, and if you would like to see this change happen, it's also a need. And I see difficulties also in the supply chain. Yes, they could be overcome. They will take some time, and as also mentioned here, probably the only one who can change this, as we have 95% of all rare earth minerals in China. It takes a lot of support from governments to change this situation, and they are probably the only one who can do it also. And but I think the biggest problem we have is the energy, and to source green energy and find the right energy resources. I think that's the most challenging part. I mean, also our factory in Italy would probably consume up to 1% of all energy in Italy. So we also need to look after how we are sourcing our energy, and there are a number of opportunities to be a part of it. I mean, we are also being forced into situations where you also need to take action and look after the situation. I mean, I'm talking about where can we find this energy besides from tapping it from the grid. I see also in Italy we have a huge opportunity for geothermal energy, a number of areas which hardly hasn't been explored in Italy. And so therefore it's a lot of things that's going to happen, and also will change. Everything will change. That's the way I see it. I see also this downturn now coming is going to change all our lives, and this is just what we are doing is a part of a new beginning.
That's a pretty remarkable statistic you just said there, that eventually the factory would consume 1% of energy across Italy. So I think it gives us a sense of the scale of energy consumption that goes into that, the potential emissions, why that needs to be addressed from a holistic point of view. If we're talking about a green battery, then it needs to be greener in its production, but also those cost factors, obviously. So I want to just pick up on that point a little bit around the potential for green energy to supply an operation like that. What kind of timescale would you imagine that needs to happen? Because you're looking to come online, or at least begin production 24, 25, and then ramp up. I think 45 gigawatts is the planned capacity in Italy. We can come on to Italvolt after. What sort of transition period would you envision needing to reach that kind of goal?
I clearly see that when we are in a production start in maybe early 25, I can see that we're probably missing out on some space of energy that we need to still continue working on. I'm not sure that we were able to fulfill the commitment of being totally green on energy in 2025. I clearly also see that in the case of Italy, 40% of all natural gas comes from Russia, and that's something that we would like to change. And so therefore I see also this will also bring opportunities. I mean, in Italy we have one of 7 super volcanoes, but we also have restrictions in terms of permitting and these areas, which has to be changed. I mean, I think Italy can be totally independent on energy if they are working on these areas, and the whole country could be supported by geothermal energy. That's the way I see it. It's a huge opportunity for a country like Italy. And also I see that Italy has been in decline or has been having difficulties for many years, and the opportunity they now have to be a part of this new green space is massive, and it's going to be extremely interesting. And if they're now grabbing this opportunity, they could easily become one of the leaders in Europe in this space.
Some tremendous opportunity there. Obviously, some volcanoes to scale first, but those are indeed part of the opportunity. I wanted to turn a bit to what Daniel referred to, obviously, in the raw material upstream. You also just obviously mentioned the dominance of China in certain regions for some of these inputs. Firstly, on the price volatility that we've seen and continue to see, does it change for you? Does it change the business model for battery production in any ways, compared to even where we were, let's say February 20th, 2022, or whatever the signal point might be?
Yes, it's a dramatic change, and for sure it will affect how the business model will look like. And it's also a bit hard to predict. We just need to follow right now and try to understand. I think no one really have a clear picture on where we are heading right now, and we can just see that the costs are escalating in a number of areas, and for sure that will affect how these factories will be built, and also we need to refine our engineering process and try to cut costs in this process, and to make we are also now eyeing machineries which are significantly reduce the scrap, and that will also save us a lot of money. And these kind of things can also compensate higher raw material costs if we can do this in an even more proper way. So that could also have a huge impact on the business.
One of the objectives that we see, certainly from governments as well, and increasingly in focus from OEMs too, is clearly regionalization of the gigafactory and cell. That is relatively clear, as Daniel laid out. The bigger challenge probably is upstream, and we look at things like mining of those materials. In Europe, that seems to me like it would be a 10-year horizon, I think. I mean, in terms of any meaningful gains in that. In the meantime, are there other things that can be done to mitigate the risks that come? Again, in this transition phase over that launch production over the next 5-10 years.
Yes, I mean, to recreate a supply chain for the battery industry in Europe will take time. And clearly, there are announcements also. I mean, UK have a target of 2030, which is not realistic. It will not happen. It will take a lot longer. I think 2035 is still a huge challenge. And we're going to see, I mean, in Europe, we produce 18.6 million cars. Our factory, which is huge, is massive, it's one of the largest in Europe that we intend to build. It can produce battery cells for 550,000 cars. And if we all go electric, which is 18.6 million cars, you need a number. You need 20 of these factories, 30 of these factories, easily. And depending on how you can build these in a more efficient way. And so therefore, it's a huge investment. And then recreating a supply chain who can support this massive change from combustion engine to EV is going to be extremely difficult and challenging. And I foresee that we will have a transition period a lot longer than we expected. I can see also clearly that e-fuels will play a role. There will be a number of areas where actually we will help the transition to go fully electric. But to be fully electric like in Europe with 18.6 million cars going electric, it will take a very long time. We had spent more than 100 years with the combustion engine, and this is nothing that we change in 5 to 10 years. It's a very naive view on the situation. That's the way I see it.
So definitely some realism, the dose of realism there around the targets and even regulations, let's say, that are being legislated in. But if I turn to the US and the approach that you're taking there in California, I mean, there you're aiming for an on-site supply of lithium, if I understand correctly, with a partner there, with the CTR-controlled thermal resources. Talk a little bit about that. What are the innovations that are required? Is this a vision that, you know, it's a great vision, but is a vision that obviously will need some transition and other steps to get to something so hyper-local, as we might call it?
Yes, it's a fascinating narrative for sure. I mean, it's the site that we have been choosing there. It's in Salton Sea, and it's one of the richest areas of lithium probably in the world. It's massively rich of lithium, and also of geothermal energy. And these are two areas we can actually, so we can recover both lithium and energy. For sure, we need to transfer into cathodes, but I mean, so there are still some parts missing in the supply chain, but can be added at site. So it's an amazing story and amazing opportunity. I think this is the only gigafactory project in the world that can actually say that we can digest our own lithium and energy at the actual site of the factory. So that's an amazing opportunity. And we also, when we launched this, we had the Secretary of Energy in the US visiting our site, and they are paying a lot of attention to this. And clearly, America is probably a year and a half, maybe even 2 years behind Europe in this process. But in the way they're now fueling funds into this, I can clearly see they're going to pick up very, very soon.
Yes, and you know, holistically, we see a lot of activity as well upstream in Canada and places like that too, to support this growth. If we look at some of the other partnerships that you and with Italvolt and laterally also with Statevolt, I mean, and one recent one that I believe has just been spoken about is with the university, and specifically on looking at recycling materials. Correct, and Daniel referred to that will become more important. So how much of an impact and how relevant, how important will the recycling of the materials you're consuming be, again, in this ramp up phase, and how quickly will that become critical?
Yes, for sure. If you see on the market, we don't have much batteries to recycle yet, as we don't have an EV fleet, and the batteries on the market, they are still in function. So they are working very well and servicing the owners of the EV cars. Clearly, what was coming now, when we are in production, there will be some scrap, and that has to be recycled. So we also have designed a recycling plant within the gigafactory, so we can digest the scrap at site and recycle it. And as we also need the minerals, so therefore it's a good way for us to recycle it immediately and put it back into production. But there's also something that we are working on, the machinery, and find the right equipment so we create less scrap and less need for recycling, for sure. But it's an important ingredient for us to have at site.
Great. When we've spoken previously, I think you've also mentioned to us how the idea of vision for Italvolt is to partner as well on the R&D technology of the battery, and for Italvolt to therefore focus more effectively on the production, on scaling the production as a kind of IP. Are you closer to establishing those partnerships than you were previously?
Yes, we have a joint venture actually at the table currently, and this gives us a fast charging technology together with a base technology. And we are also in talks with serious offtakes with major OEMs, and which can also be a part of the process going forward, and also will be able to support the process for us in the final engineering phase. So we are quite well furnished, and it's an exciting time for us. And we clearly see it's been, I cannot say it has been easy, but it's certainly been rewarding. And we are in a phase now where we can clearly see this going to be very exciting autumn and winter for us.
Absolutely. And so that partnership for the technology is close with a joint venture. Could you also imagine partnering with other types of suppliers and manufacturers on other aspects of let's say the complete battery and powertrain, be it in the housing, the pack, the module, the systems? you know, as we talked about with Daniel on that side, is that also something that is in focus for you?
Yes, I see the whole industry is, firstly, I don't see that we have competition, because there are no competition, as the demand is so much higher than the supply for the next 15 years. So it's not a direct competition scenario. So I think we all need to collaborate to make all this happen. And that's something we discussed also previously here regarding the timing of when can we go all electric. And if we all collaborate, all gigafactory projects, governments, institutions, supply chain, all has to be involved in the process and be a part of it. So we are very open to collaborations and finding solution with others. So it's, for us, it's a given. I mean, we are really keen on collaborations. We like that a lot.
Yes, and I mean, one of the other collaborations I know that has also been established is with for example, ABB, so sort of industrial automation and robotic experts. Do you ultimately see the gigafactory as a highly automated space? We're going to come back onto the labor opportunities in a moment, but will it be a highly automated operation?
Yes. We have actually eye in two scenarios. I mean, first a low automation, but also a high automation scenario. And well, I'm very friendly with creating jobs, but for sure from the financial perspective, we also need to look into the business and make it work. So a high automation will for sure give us many benefits, but still being a part of a great job creation. We also see a factory like this in this kind of scale is creating 10,000 jobs in the larger ecosystem, not just a direct jobs from the factory. Now we're talking supply chain services around the factory. So it's a huge impact. With even if we go on a high automation, we can see that we're creating 10,000 jobs in the area, which is fantastic, and that's the most important for us to be a part of, and extremely rewarding to be a part of creating such opportunity.
Great, and then we actually have a few questions that have come in on that, what I'll come to shortly. Maybe a last question to throw to you, Lars, and then I'll bring Daniel in. You've obviously mentioned the important role that the governments will play in this transition, and the mention of Secretary Granholm being there in the US. It's an important signal from the Department of Energy. If we look to Europe, for example, now, and in Italy, what's some of the things you most need and want to see to help make this transition go from a fanciful target to reality?
I can clearly see that the need for support from government. I'm just not talking about financial support. I also talk about believing in these projects. I mean, we have seen in Italy, we have a capex of 3.5 billion euros, which is massive. And from Italian perspective, it has been a lot of questions around this. Can you really source this kind of funds? Is this for real? Can it happen? Because in Italy, we have an old tradition that is only big corporations or banks who can do these type of projects. So therefore, it's been a bit hard to explain, and also explaining how the market is, and also explaining that this is actually a new time. It's a new industrialization which haven't happened in 100 years. And from that perspective, it's been tough. And therefore, I see also governments can be more updated on what's really going on, as they also are a part of the transition. So therefore, I really encourage governments to take more active role in the process, and also understand what's going on in the world, because many of them are still living in the past here and cannot see that this is a huge change that will change our lives, and they don't really got it yet. So it's so therefore I think government should be more involved in the processes.
Absolutely. I'm going to use that as a cue to bring Daniel Harrison back into the conversation as well. Daniel, thanks again. You alluded to this in your presentation, some of the different things that are happening. Of course, if we look to China as well, we would see significant support, let's say, for those value chains in the past years. What echoing Lars's point, I mean, where do you see the most active engagement, and where do you think it needs to focus for some of these targets to be realized?
I mean, in terms of government support, you mean?
Yes.
Yes. I mean, it's we've seen the EU battery regulation, which essentially stipulates that each battery will have to be sourced from local materials within Europe, but also have a battery passport attached to it, I think by 2027, which will have a complete sort of record of its carbon footprint that it's been produced by, almost like a blockchain showing every stage of its history. So that's a very critical aspect that the European Union is certainly pushing through to drive the regionalization and development of European battery supply chains. So that's a good example.
Yeah, and Lars, I mean, I think, do you think it's going far enough in that case?
Well, no, I think we need to have a more active role in the process itself. It's for sure it's good that we're creating opportunities and maybe also limiting Asian batteries inflowing to Europe later on, even if it's going to be difficult for the automotive industry to support their manufacturing. That's something we also need to understand, because we have a 45 gigawatt capacity fully furnished, but in 25 we might have 6 gigawatt in production, and that goes for all the other initiatives in Europe as well, which means that we have still going to have a fairly low capacity in Europe, and we will not have enough battery to support the European current automotive industry with batteries. So that's going to be very challenging, and at the same time need to stop the inflow of Asian batteries into Europe. So it's going to be a tough balance and how to make this work. And so therefore I can clearly see that their involvement in these factories has to accelerate even more, because we need the capacity and we need it now, and it's going to happen in the pace proposed by the governments. Then we need to accelerate a lot more.
And I will start with you on this one, on Daniel. I referred to platform sharing, and you know what we see, talk about, you know, GM and Honda, for example, in the US. We see Volkswagen and Ford on a platform level on some aspects of battery. Is there more kind of competitive sharing that OEMs can do to help in this transition as well, given the capital costs that are there, given some of the uncertainties? Are we likely to see more of that happen?
I think to an extent there will be. I mean, for example, we know that Ford uses the VW's MEB platform for some of its electric vehicles, so there is scope for that. I think at the same time there's always going to be a competitive advantage gained by developing your own cells, your own pack, your own software to get that critical competitive advantage. So I sort of see both happening at the same time. I don't see a situation where we have a common platform that all OEMs use and then they personalize it with their own brand. I don't see that happening at all.
So what about from your side, if we think about the battery, will it become a space of more shared technology, or as with very clear competitive lines?
Yes, I think it has to be more. The thing is, for the automotive industry, by tradition, we can see this platform had a lifespan between 6 to 9 years. It's not now going to be a lot shorter, which means it's going to be extremely costly for the automotive industry to catch up. And the reason for it being shorter, because that's the battery technology will going quite fast, and it's going to be, I mean, if you're sitting in a platform where you have a battery which charges in 40 minutes and the competition have a battery charge in 5, then they need to replace the platform most of the times, if you cannot have a flexible platform can accommodate other solutions. But it's so therefore I foresee that they're going to be a lot more well, I'm not sure that all OEM will survive this. It's going to be extremely costly, and I'm not sure they're going to make it. And also, I mean, the whole transition is going to hit very hard on unemployment. It's a lot of jobs will be lost. They're talking about millions, and so therefore we also need to ramp this up and to accommodate all these people that will be unemployed going forward, because the combustion engine, as we all know, have a lot of bits and pieces. The electric car doesn't have it, and therefore I can only see in our part in Piemonte we're talking about 60 to 100,000 jobs in a short period of time, and I can see in Europe it's millions of jobs that will be lost in this process. So therefore we need to ramp it up and make sure that we can offer new jobs for these people in gigafactories, for instance.
It's an important point, and one I almost feel we live in a strange contradiction of times. You kind of alluded to it, Daniel, but I mean, the moment in the automotive industry and many industries, it feels there's labor shortages at every turn. But at the same time, as you're saying, Lars, there's many aspects of, well, be it the potential downturn we're facing, but also more critically, the structural changes in the industry. Do you think, you know, that battery production gigafactories is the important way to counterbalance that? And then I'll follow up on the skills. So firstly, but is that how you see it, Lars, that actually as the jobs decline in one bit, that the gigafactory has the opportunity to capture it?
Yes, they can. Not the factory itself, but the supply chain around the factory. I mean, the giga site around the factory will recover a lot of these jobs. And as mentioned also for our project in Italy, in Piemonte, it's 10,000 jobs. So, I mean, it will recover a lot of these jobs actually that will be lost. And so from that perspective, I see it as a solution and something that could for sure ease this kind of pain and also economic downturn, having all these people unemployed. And also when we're talking about well, it's true also that we have difficulties these days to find workforce, but I mean, we're talking about extremely qualified workforce like engineers and technicians and so on. But here I'm talking about blue collars, and that will be the big problem going forward.
There's a question from the audience, I guess, kind of referring to those high-skilled areas. The question is there a plan or program to work with local universities to create high-skilled engineers to generate job opportunities in the Imperial Valley? So that's referring to the Italvolt facility. But I think we could extend this question as well to Italy as well. So is that an important part of your plan?
Yes, we have collaborations both in the US and also in Italy. In Italy, we just closed an agreement with Milano Politecnico, and which is establishing a project on recycling and minerals. But it's also it will be extended into education and also for on the high level. And but also we are setting up a program, a battery academy, where we will also inviting young kids, 16, 17 years old, to be a part of the battery academy, to be the future worker of the factory. And similar projects are ongoing in the US also with the University of San Diego, for instance.
And we have a question here. Daniel, I might start with this one to you. The question is, how important is LCA, life cycle assessment, for gigafactories? I guess how important is it? How important will it become?
Well, as I was alluding to in terms of the European battery regulation, very important, because ultimately they will have to prove that they can produce and manufacture the battery cells and the wider supply chain and become carbon neutral. I know CATL, we interviewed them recently for their first carbon neutral gigafactory. So that's a very significant move in that direction. And I think, you know, for them, you know, Lars talked about, you know, Asian batteries coming into Europe and that being overwhelming in terms of volumes, and when we need to regionalize the European battery supply chain. And one of the reasons CATL are creating that carbon neutral battery plant is so that come that point when that battery regulation kicks in, they will be able to supply to the European Union as an Asian manufacturer, either at their German plant in Erfurt, I believe. But it's a case of, I think all of the supply chain will have to become carbon neutral and fulfill that life cycle assessment.
Yeah, and Lars, I mean, again, going back to that figure, you know, 1% of all energy in Italy, possibly. So clearly, when you put that into the context, I mean, these facilities will, and then taking the supply chain, we have an order of magnitude. If not looked at from a life cycle point of view, would become tremendous centers of energy cost, emissions, etc. if it wasn't then looked at. So I'm guessing for you, this is really at the heart of some of the business models that you're proposing.
Yes, I mean, that's why we're also being forced to take an active role in the sourcing of energy, and which actually map us more into being a part of a chemical company, but also being a half energy company at the same time. So we need to involve ourselves in the energy space a lot more than we probably anticipated initially when we launched these projects. So we can clearly see that we need to take an active role in the creation of energy, or at least understanding where this energy will come from, and support these processes also. So it's a huge challenge, and that's my biggest concern, is the energy, especially the green energy, because it's going to create massive problems. And also, as you see, the rise in the cost of energy will probably be crazy this winter to start with, and this is something that's not gonna leave us for a very long time. So we need to live with a new reality, and therefore we need to find new energy resources and try to understand how we can balance this in a more proper way.
Well, you know, an ICE powertrain may be more complex mechanically, but I think these points show, you know, if you're going to be in the EV powertrain space and the battery space, you, as Lars alluded to, you need to be a chemical company, you potentially need to be an energy producer in your own right. So the complexity of this is certainly significant. But another audience question that we had, so obviously we were talking about battery cells and packs being imported from Asia because of lack of capacity, potentially that increasing at least until the production goes up. But this question is actually, looking at some of the equipment as well. So the question, or at least the statement, is it would be good to analyze the sourcing for equipment related to gigafactory battery plants, because today a lot is also imported from Asia Pacific for current cell manufacturing. So, you know, that point there, that it's also holistically, it's not even just the cells itself, but I think to actually produce this equipment. And I know from speaking to Volkswagen, for example, who of course are building up a gigafactory in Salzgitter and elsewhere, but they're relying quite a bit on what's happening in Goshen in China, and where they're already obviously ahead. And you definitely, it's not as simple as turning a switch on in Germany. So I think, again, Lars, just if there's anything you wanted to add to that comment around working with your partners, for example, to localize other aspects of that production too.
Challenging with the machine and the equipment, and a lot of these producers are in Asia and China, but also high risk that you receive equipment that is not really valid when you have it all installed also. We have very interesting collaborations in Germany currently, where we see a totally new generation of cell manufacturing equipment, which create less scrap and also been more efficient, and also more energy efficient in that way. So it's really interesting things what's happening now. I can see the new engineering equipment that's now coming in Europe, and especially in Germany, are probably 5 years ahead of the equipment that you can find in Asia currently. For sure, it's going to be more expensive, but you're going to earn them back a lot faster as it creates less scrap.
Absolutely. So yeah, we're really important point there. I mean, we're coming close up to the hour here, but I wanted to just maybe one or two last questions for our experts here. So, and this relates to actually another question that came in on the audience. So do you think, I mean, rapid changes in chemistry and technology, whether that's the cell design or even new things like solid state, could this either disrupt the capital investments and the current kind of planning that we're talking about here, or as one of our audience member puts it, is something like that, solid state, actually an opportunity for Europe or the US to move ahead from where perhaps they're behind in places like Asia? So again, that's not an easy question to answer, but I'm interested. Maybe Dan, I'll start with you and then come to Lars on that.
Yeah, that's a really great question. And what we're gradually seeing is there's a clear sort of so essentially for base level, entry level vehicles, OEMs are starting to choose LFP chemistry because it's cheaper. It's less
lithium phosphate.
Lithium phosphate, sorry, LFP, and it's cheaper. Although it has less energy density, therefore it means a bigger, heavier battery. It makes more sense to bring the overall cost of the EV down. Next up is probably the most common, which is NMC, nickel, manganese, cobalt. Higher up would be sort of for premium vehicles, NCA, so nickel, cobalt, and aluminium, and that's used by Tesla. And at the very high end, you're likely to see, in very sort of niche high-end cars, you're going to see the solid state come in. But remember, that's also a lithium technology, so it's just replacing the liquid electrolyte with a solid material. So I don't see a fundamental shift in the gigafactories, the processes. So therefore, very little risk in investment. It just means the chemistry is going to constantly evolve.
Yeah, as you said, which we're already seeing. Lars, anything you would add to that?
Yes, I mean, we've been also working very hard on this. We also clearly see that the technology will advance very fast in the next 10 years. And we try, as this is a very heavy investment for 3.5 billion, we also see that we need to future-proof our factory. So we created a modular factory, which many are for sure doing. And this also gives a lot of flexibility, and we can have multiple technologies also ongoing. And also trying to create it or engineer it in that way that we can easily change the technology without being too costly of the equipment or in changing the building. So that's something we're trying to foresee and trying to eliminate the costs for a future scenario where the technology changes significantly.
Great. Well, just a last question, and the answer might seem obvious, but I don't think it is so obvious necessarily. And it's really just, well, what will success look like in 5 years in this space, in EV battery and production? Clearly, you know, there's lots of plans around ramp up, but what, Lars, what for you, for your companies, what will success look like in 5 years?
Well, for sure, I hope, well, first can start with a hope for. I hope that all these projects in Europe will at least be able to start some kind of production. That's the most important thing, and it's a good start. But as said, the transition will take longer, and we will for sure be well ahead, and we are taking the first very important steps. But I also see close collaboration with the automotive industry, with the OEMs, and being a part of the various processes, and also trying to find some kind of standards. I don't see that we can have 10 different type of standards, and this is far too costly. I foresee maybe 2 to 4 technologies. Otherwise, it would be too costly for the automotive industry to use these products, and it has to be some standard going forward, and this is going to take some time, and eventually in 5 years time we probably or hopefully have created some kind of standard within the industry.
Great points there. So obviously not just about getting those operations going, but really about seeing some changes and standards in the industry as well. Daniel, any last thoughts about what success will look like in 5 years?
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's about the constant evolution in battery technology. You know, I think the pre-COVID, there was a constant downward trajectory in terms of costs. I think at one point it reached as low as $120 or so per kilowatt hour at the cell level, that is. We've seen obviously a spike recently with raw material prices. I calculated it's gone up to something like 200 kilowatts an hour, which I estimate adds cost of around $4,000 to $5,000 per vehicle for an average battery pack. So, and there's often this talk about, okay, once it reached that magical $100 per kilowatt hour, then you have price parity with ICE powertrains, and that's when you'll get the mass consumer transformation, realizing, okay, the total cost of ownership is considerably lower now, the purchase cost is the same. Then you'll see that huge transformation and a huge ramp up in demand and acceptance. It will become mainstream. That's for me where the success comes.
Fascinating. It's going to be quite a journey, and it has been even for me for the last hour. We've covered so much, but I want to thank both of our experts today. Lars, thank you so much for sharing with us, and really looking forward to talking more with you about this, including as you establish those partnerships and get going. And I'm going to tell our audience immediately about the really important opportunity to connect with Lars with us, but also Daniel, many thanks to you, and again for this insights and for tolerating you know, my demands from Mr. Battery, and again to our audience to make sure you download those slides and indeed check out that battery report that Daniel has just done. I think you'll really enjoy the data that comes out of that. But also just to you know, so everybody know, we'll put a link into the website on this. We will be connecting in person, hopefully with many of you, and indeed with Lars Carlstrom. Lars Carlstrom will be among our speakers in Munich in December this year, December 7th, where we're talking about scaling up EV and battery production, the flexibility, automation, digitalization, and partnerships that will support that. I'm very excited to bring this event to you, and really hope you'll join. There's some of the experts already we know who will be joining us there, and there's a lot more we're building and planning. So, you know, we're really covering many aspects of the value chain, going inside factories and looking at processes, but clearly looking at the strategic side of what this transition means as well. Lars highlighted that very well in terms of what needs to happen, and so we're going to spend, it will be a packed day, and there'll be some great stuff alongside it. So I hope you'll consider joining us then. It'll also be streamed online, but please do join us if you can be in Munich in December. Maybe we'll take a jaunt to the Christmas market as well in the meantime. But so that's an upcoming opportunity. And you know, also we'll be back with the Automotive Livestream series continuing after we'll take the break in August, but we're back in early September talking about startup manufacturers. And the question, are all OEM startups now really? You know, clearly we have brands which are launching new products but partnering with others, but you know, as we talked about in this whole last hour, so many new processes involved. It's really in reinventing many areas of production, value chain, supply chain, logistics. So I hope you'll join up. The link is coming at you. You can sign up already for that today. We're supported by ArcelorMittal for that, and we'll be bringing an exciting program to you then. So that's September 8th. And I can't recommend enough, if you're in the Detroit area in the end of September, consider joining us for Automotive Logistics and Supply Chain Global. This is our automotive logistics brand, talking about automotive logistics with GM, Stellantis, Nissan, looking across all the disruptions we see, of course, in the supply chain and the competitive changes that need to happen. Of course, we'll talk a lot too on the EV and battery side. So again, more links coming your way. We're trying to plan out your next couple of months really for you. That's the idea. But again, mostly we hope you'll enjoy it. You'll join us in December. That's really it for us here today at AMS Automotive Evolution live stream. You can find this other live streams on the page, which you can see listed there on our website, and register for upcoming events. Look at, you know, check out the past events which we had on demand. This very event will be available by tomorrow latest. So if you've missed anything and you want to go back and check it out, do it there. You can download the slides right here or from our website then. So again, look forward to seeing you. It's been really great for me to host and to share these insights with all of you. So once again, big thanks to Lars, big thanks to Daniel, and thanks to you for joining us, and look forward to seeing you at the next live stream or event.